When event planner Angeline discovers her manipulative sister Emma has stolen her dream wedding venue through forged documents, she faces a choice. Be the family peacekeeper as always, or fight back. For the first time in 28 years, Angeline chooses herself, exposing Emma's fraud, ending toxic relationships, and reclaiming Rosewood Manor. Her stand transforms not just her wedding day, but her entire family dynamic. A year later, with a thriving business in Portland and healthy relationships built on respect rather than obligation, Angeline has finally learned that self-respect is the foundation of genuine love. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Angeline's fountain pen froze above the contract, the elegant script of Rosewood Manor wedding agreement suddenly blurring before her eyes. The phone call she'd just ended replayed in her mind like a broken record, each word from the venue coordinator more devastating than the last. "I'm so sorry, Miss Smith, but there seems to be a conflict with your booking. Your sister Emma has provided documentation showing she had a prior reservation under the family emergency clause." The pristine Charleston office around her, with its carefully curated vision boards, sample centerpieces, and color-coordinated fabric swatches, now felt like a museum of broken dreams. 3 years of planning. 3 years of saving every penny to afford the venue where her grandmother Grace had once polished silver and arranged flowers for Charleston's most elite families. Angeline set the pen down with deliberate precision, her hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. She'd built her event planning business, Magnolia Moments, from nothing, working 16-hour days to prove she belonged in Charleston's old money circles. Every detail of her August wedding had been meticulously planned, every vendor carefully selected. But none of that mattered now. The irony wasn't lost on her. 24 hours ago, she'd been putting the finishing touches on what Southern Living magazine was calling Charleston's Wedding of the Year. Now she was staring at a contract for a venue that apparently no longer belonged to her. Her phone buzzed. Emma's contact photo, all perfect teeth and Instagram-filtered skin, filled the screen. "Angeline!" Emma's voice carried that particular breathless quality she used when she was about to deliver bad news, wrapped in false concern. "I just heard from Rosewood Manor. There's been some kind of mix-up." "Cut the act, Emma." Angeline's voice was quieter than she'd intended, which somehow made it more menacing. "I just got off the phone with Caroline. You claimed a family emergency clause for August 15th. My wedding date. Well, technically, it was my date first." "Your date?" Angeline stood, pacing to the window that overlooked King Street. Below, tourists wandered between antique shops and cafes, blissfully unaware that her world was imploding. "You broke up with Daniel 2 months ago, after cheating on him, with your personal trainer." "That's not..." "Angeline, you don't understand. I need this. After everything that's happened, I need something good in my life. Something perfect." The familiar ache started in Angeline's chest, the same feeling she'd carried since childhood whenever Emma's needs suddenly became the family's top priority. She could picture her sister now, probably sitting in her converted carriage house behind their parents' mansion, surrounded by ring lights and camera equipment for her next Instagram post about overcoming heartbreak. "You need this?" Angeline's laugh held no humor. "Emma, I put down a deposit 3 years ago." 3 years. "I have contracts, payments, a whole wedding planned around this venue." "But Angeline, you're successful. You can have any venue you want. You know people." "I don't have those connections." The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that Angeline almost missed it. Almost. Emma's ability to position herself as the victim in every situation was a masterclass in emotional manipulation that their mother had enabled for 25 years. "What about your backup venue?" Angeline asked, grasping for reason. "The one you mentioned last month?" Silence. Then, there isn't one. "Angeline, please. I'm drowning here. Daniel left me. Everyone's talking about what I did, and I just need one thing, one perfect thing, to prove I'm not completely worthless." Angeline closed her eyes, remembering the last time she'd heard that particular tone. Emma had been 15, caught shoplifting at the mall. She'd used the same wounded voice, the same desperate plea for understanding. Their mother had grounded Angeline instead for not watching out for her sister. How did you even know about the family emergency clause? I called the venue months ago, just to see what was available. Caroline mentioned it when I asked about cancellation policies. Months ago. Before the breakup. Before the supposed desperation. Angeline felt something cold settle in her stomach. You planned this. No! Angeline, I would never. Angeline ended the call. She stood in her office, surrounded by the detritus of her perfect wedding plans, and felt something shift inside her chest. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something harder was taking shape. Her phone rang again. This time, it was her mother. Angeline, sweetheart, I just spoke with Emma. She's beside herself. Of course she was. Mom, she stole my wedding venue. She didn't steal anything, honey. There was obviously some miscommunication at the venue. These things happen. A miscommunication that only benefited Emma. Patricia's sigh carried the weight of years of playing referee between her daughters. Angeline, you know Emma's been struggling since the breakup. She's fragile right now. And you're so strong, so capable. Surely you can find another beautiful venue? There it was. The familiar refrain of Angeline's childhood. Emma is fragile. Angeline is strong. Angeline can handle it. Angeline can fix it. Angeline can sacrifice for the good of the family peace. This isn't just any venue, Mom. It's Rosewood Manor. I know, sweetie, but where Grandma Grace worked. Where she told me stories about the grand weddings, where she inspired my whole career. Where I've dreamed of getting married since I was 8 years old. Another sigh. Angeline, your grandmother would want you to be the bigger person here. She'd want you to take care of your sister. Angeline stared at her reflection in the window, seeing not just herself but the ghost of every family gathering where Emma's needs had taken precedence. Every time Angeline's feelings had been dismissed as less important than keeping Emma happy. Would she? Angeline asked quietly. Or would she want me to stand up for myself for once? After ending that call, too, Angeline sat in her car outside Rosewood Manor, staring at the antebellum mansion that had featured in every dream she'd had about her wedding day. The white columns rose majestically against the Charleston sky, and the ancient oak trees dripped with Spanish moss like something from a fairy tale. She walked the gardens alone, her heels clicking on the brick pathways her grandmother had swept countless times. Grace Chen had come to America with nothing, working her way up from scullery maid to head housekeeper over 30 years at Rosewood Manor. She'd taken 8-year-old Angeline here once, during a holiday party when the family was away. See that grand staircase, little one? Grace had whispered, her accent still thick after decades in Charleston. I cleaned every spindle by hand. And this ballroom. I arranged flowers for 3 governors' daughters' weddings here. Angeline had pressed her small face against the window, watching the golden light play across the parquet floors. It's like a princess castle, Grandma. Someday, Grace had said, smoothing Angeline's hair, you'll be the princess, not the one cleaning up after her. Now, standing in those same gardens, Angeline felt the weight of that promise. Her grandmother had died when Angeline was 16, never living to see her granddaughter build a successful business or plan a wedding at the very place where Grace had spent her working life. Emma was going to take that away. With their parents' blessing, Angeline's phone buzzed with a text from her fiancé Marcus. Heard about the venue, don't let this stress you out. We'll figure something out. The casual dismissal in those words, the assumption that she should simply accept this loss and move on, crystallized something in Angeline's chest. Marcus had never understood why Rosewood Manor mattered so much. He'd suggested they could save money with a different venue, somewhere more practical. She typed back, "It's not about figuring something out. It's about what was taken from me." His response came immediately. "Don't be dramatic, it's just a building." Just a building. Like her grandmother's legacy was just a building. Like her dreams were just buildings. Angeline deleted the text without responding and drove home through the Charleston streets, past the historic homes and manicured gardens that had shaped her aesthetic sense, past the college where she'd worked 3 jobs to pay tuition, while Emma lived in the dorm their parents funded. In her apartment, she spread out all the wedding planning materials on her dining table: contracts, vendor agreements, timeline spreadsheets, inspiration photos. Everything organized with the precision that had made her business successful. Everything now worthless. She opened her laptop and began typing, her fingers moving with purpose across the keys. If Emma wanted to play games with family emergency clauses and emotional manipulation, Angeline could research too. Every venue had policies, procedures, loopholes. As she worked, Angeline felt the hurt, transforming into something sharper, more focused. Her whole life, she'd been the responsible one, the one who sacrificed, the one who kept the peace. She'd watched Emma charm her way out of consequences, while Angeline worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Not this time. Angeline's phone rang again. Emma, then her mother, then Emma again. She let them all go to voicemail. Tomorrow, she would start making calls of her own. Tomorrow, she would stop being the bigger person. The perfect storm had been building for 28 years, and Angeline was finally ready to let it break. Angeline woke at 5 a.m. with the kind of clarity that only comes after a sleepless night spent planning warfare. Her laptop still glowed on the dining table, surrounded by printouts of venue contracts, wedding industry regulations, and, most importantly, the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs guidelines on fraudulent business practices. She'd found it buried in the fine print of Rosewood Manor's booking policies. The family emergency clause could only be invoked with documented proof of genuine emergency and required a review period of 72 hours before confirmation. Emma's emergency was a breakup that happened 2 months ago, and the venue had confirmed her booking within 24 hours. Caroline at Rosewood Manor answered on the first ring, her voice tight with professional politeness. "Ms. Smith, I was hoping you'd call. I want you to know how sorry I am about this situation. Caroline, I need you to pull Emma's emergency documentation." A pause. "I'm not sure I can discuss another client's. I'm not asking you to discuss it, I'm asking you to look at it. Really look at it. Because I think you'll find that a voluntary breakup 2 months ago doesn't constitute the kind of family emergency your policy requires." The silence stretched longer this time. Finally, "Ms. Smith, can you come in this morning? I think we should discuss this in person." Angeline's second call was to James Morrison, the attorney who'd helped her establish Magnolia Moments. They'd dated briefly in law school before realizing they were better as friends, and he'd been handling her business legal matters ever since. "Angel, do you know what time it is?" "James, I need you to look into something. Contract interference, possibly fraud. Can you meet me at 9? She heard him shifting, probably reaching for a notepad. James had always been sharp when it came to business, even at dawn. "What kind of fraud?" "The kind that steals someone's wedding venue through fake emergencies and family connections." "I'll bring coffee." By 8 a.m., Angeline was at Rosewood Manor, sitting across from Caroline in the venue coordinator's office. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the same gardens where she'd stood yesterday, feeling defeated. Today, she felt something entirely different. "I've reviewed the documentation," Caroline said carefully, "and I have to admit, there are some inconsistencies." Angeline waited. She'd learned from years of negotiating with vendors that silence was often more powerful than pressure. The emergency clause requires documentation of an immediate family crisis: death, serious illness, military deployment. Your sister provided medical documentation, but Caroline slid a folder across the desk. The dates don't align with her story. Angeline opened the folder. Inside was a doctor's note dated 3 weeks ago, citing, quote, "severe emotional distress and anxiety following relationship trauma." Not 2 months ago when the breakup happened. 3 weeks ago, right around the time Emma would have realized her backup options were running out. "She got a doctor to write her a note," Angeline said quietly. "It appears so. And I'm afraid I accepted it without proper verification because, well, your families have such a long history with Rosewood Manor. Your grandmother, Grace," Caroline's voice softened, "she was beloved here. When your sister mentioned she was Grace Chen's granddaughter too, I wanted to help." The manipulation was even more calculated than Angeline had imagined. Emma had leveraged their grandmother's memory, knowing Caroline would remember Grace fondly. What happens now? Caroline straightened in her chair, business mode returning. I'm reinstating your original booking. Effective immediately. Your sister's reservation is cancelled. I should have followed proper procedures from the beginning. Angeline felt the victory, but it tasted different than she'd expected. There was satisfaction, yes, but also something heavier. She was about to destroy Emma's wedding plans as thoroughly as Emma had tried to destroy hers. Her phone buzzed as she left Rosewood Manor. Marcus, whatever you're planning, don't do anything crazy. Family is family. She stared at the text, remembering how quickly he'd dismissed her pain yesterday. How readily he'd assumed she should just find another venue, another dream, another compromise. Instead of responding to Marcus, she called her business partner and best friend, Sophia. Please tell me you didn't spend all night plotting revenge, Sophia said by way of greeting. I spent all night researching legal remedies. That's somehow worse. What did you find? Emma forged medical documentation to steal my venue. I'm getting it back. And then what? You think this ends here? Your sister isn't going to just accept defeat gracefully? Angeline paused at her car, looking back at Rosewood Manor's white columns. Then I guess we'll see what she's really made of when she can't manipulate her way out of consequences. Angel, are you sure you want to start this war? For the first time in 24 hours, Angeline smiled. Sophia, I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing it. Emma's scream could probably be heard 3 blocks away. Angeline held her phone at arm's length as her sister's voice reached a pitch that threatened to shatter glass. She was sitting in her office, calmly reviewing catering contracts, when Caroline had apparently delivered the news. You vindictive bitch, Emma shrieked. How could you do this to me? How could you destroy my wedding? I didn't destroy anything, Angeline said, her voice steady. I simply reclaimed what was mine. You know I can't get another venue this late. You know that. The same way I couldn't get another venue when you stole mine? That's different. You needed to lie to a doctor to get fake medical documentation? The silence that followed was deafening. Angeline could practically hear Emma's brain scrambling for a new angle of attack. I don't know what you're talking about. August 4th, Emma. You saw Dr. Martinez on August 4th for, quote, severe emotional distress. 3 weeks ago. Not 2 months when you broke up with Daniel. You had no right to look at my medical records. I didn't. Caroline showed me what you submitted to the venue. Public record now, since you used it to commit fraud. Another pause. When Emma spoke again, her voice had shifted to the wounded, desperate tone that had worked on their parents for decades. Angeline, please, I'm begging you, I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. You'll what, Emma? Actually face consequences for once? I made a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to forge documents, lie to the venue coordinator, and manipulate our grandmother's memory to steal my wedding. Those aren't mistakes. That's calculated fraud. Angeline heard her mother's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. Emma must have put her on speaker. Angeline Chen Smith? Patricia's voice boomed through the phone. You apologize to your sister right now and fix this mess. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Angeline had never said no to her mother about Emma. Not once in 28 years. Excuse me? I said no, Mom. Emma committed fraud. She stole from me. And you want me to apologize? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She's your sister. Family comes first. Then maybe you should have remembered that when she was destroying mine. Angeline ended the call and immediately blocked both numbers. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear. From liberation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Your mother called me. Fix this now or we're done. Angeline stared at the ultimatum, then typed back. Then we're done. She blocked his number too. The silence in Angeline's apartment was profound. For the first time in her adult life, her phone wasn't buzzing with demands, guilt trips, or crisis management requests from her family. She sat on her couch, staring at the blocked contact list that now included half the people she'd called family. It should have felt devastating. Instead, it felt like finally being able to breathe. Sophia arrived an hour later, with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "So," she said, settling onto the couch, "I heard you just nuked your entire life. Marcus called you? Your mother called me. Then Emma. Then Marcus. Then your mother again." Sophia poured 2 generous glasses of wine. "I've been promoted to emergency contact, apparently." Angeline accepted the wine gratefully. "What did they say?" "Oh, the usual. You've lost your mind. You're being selfish. Family comes first. How could you destroy Emma's happiness, etc." Sophia took a sip and studied Angeline's face. "The real question is, how do you feel?" Angeline considered this. How did she feel? "Terrified," she said finally, "and free, which is a weird combination." "Terrified of what?" "Of being alone, of having made the wrong choice, of—" Angeline paused, surprised by the honesty that wanted to emerge. "Of finding out that standing up for myself means losing everyone. And if it does mean that, then I guess I'll know what those relationships were really worth." Sophia raised her glass. "To finding out what you're really worth." They ate in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over Charleston through Angeline's windows. It was Sophia who finally broke the quiet. "You know Emma's been calling vendors, right?" Angeline's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What kind of calls? Trying to poach your wedding arrangements?" "She contacted Magnolia Catering this morning, claimed there had been a, quote, family arrangement to transfer your contracts to her name." The audacity shouldn't have surprised Angeline anymore, but it did. "Please tell me they didn't." "Of course not, but she's desperate, Angel, really desperate. And desperate Emma is dangerous, Emma." As if summoned by their conversation, Angeline's doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she could see her father standing on the porch, still in his work clothes, looking older than she remembered. "Dad?" She opened the door cautiously. Richard Smith had always been the family mediator, the quiet voice of reason between his wife's dramatic pronouncements and his daughter's conflicts. But tonight, he looked defeated. "Can I come in?" Angeline stepped aside, noting how Sophia discreetly gathered the takeout containers and gave them privacy. "Your mother sent you," Angeline said. It wasn't a question. "No," Richard settled heavily into her armchair. "I came because I owed you an apology, about 30 years overdue." That wasn't what she'd expected. "Dad, let me say this, Angeline, please." He rubbed his face tiredly. "I've watched you sacrifice for Emma your entire life. Your toys when you were little. Your college fund when she needed rehab. Your time and energy every time she had a crisis. And I told myself we were teaching you to be generous, to be the bigger person." Angeline felt something crack in her chest. But we were teaching you that your needs didn't matter as much as hers, that keeping the peace was more important than fairness. And that's not generosity, sweetheart. That's injustice." The tears came without warning, years of suppressed resentment and hurt finally finding release. Richard moved to sit beside her on the couch, awkwardly patting her shoulder the way he had when she was small. "Emma forged medical documents, Dad. She used Grandma Grace's memory to manipulate the venue coordinator. This isn't just sibling rivalry anymore." "I know." His voice was quiet. "Caroline called me this afternoon. She and your grandmother were friends, you know. Caroline was upset when she realized how she'd been manipulated. And Mom?" Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother sees what she wants to see when it comes to Emma. She always has. I think she sees herself in Emma's struggles, and she sees her own mother's strength in you, so she expects you to be strong enough to handle everything." "What about what I want? What about my dreams?" "Your dreams matter, Angeline. They've always mattered. I should have said that years ago." They sat together in the gathering darkness, and for the first time since childhood, Angeline felt like she had at least one parent who truly saw her. "So what happens now?" she asked. Richard sighed. "Now you have your wedding at Rosewood Manor, like you planned, and Emma learns that actions have consequences. And your mother—" He paused. "Your mother learns that she can't sacrifice one daughter to save the other anymore. And if she can't learn that, then that's her choice to make, but it won't be yours to fix." The next morning brought chaos in the form of Emma, standing outside Magnolia Moments at 7 a.m., still in yesterday's clothes, mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. Angeline watched through the window as her sister paced the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear, gesticulating wildly. "She's been there for an hour," Sophia said, joining Angeline at the window with 2 cups of coffee. "I counted 3 cigarettes, 2 crying jags, and what appeared to be a full breakdown around 6:45. Should I feel guilty?" Angeline asked, surprised to find she genuinely didn't know. "Do you?" Angeline considered this as she watched Emma stumble slightly, catching herself against a lamppost. "I feel concerned, but not guilty. Is that terrible?" "It's healthy." The bell above the door chimed as Emma finally entered, bringing with her the smell of cigarettes and desperation. Up close, she looked even worse. Hollow-eyed, shaking slightly, her usually perfect appearance completely unraveled. "Angeline." Emma's voice was hoarse. "We need to talk." "Then talk." Emma glanced at Sophia, who made no move to leave. "Alone. Sophia's my business partner. She stays." For a moment, Emma's mask slipped completely, revealing something raw and furious underneath. Then, just as quickly, it was back, the wounded, fragile persona that had worked for so many years. "I'm sorry," Emma said, the words seeming to cost her physical effort. "I'm sorry that I took the venue. I was desperate, and I made bad choices." "You forged medical documents, Emma. That's not a bad choice. That's fraud." "I know." Emma's composure cracked. "I know, okay? But I can't. Angeline, I can't start over. Not again. Everyone in Charleston knows what I did to Daniel. The cheating, the lies. This wedding was supposed to be my redemption, my fresh start. By stealing mine? I thought you'd find another venue. You're so good at everything, so capable. I thought you'd just handle it, like you always do." There it was, the assumption that had defined their entire relationship, that Angeline would handle it, would sacrifice, would make it work somehow. What if I couldn't handle it this time? Emma stared at her as if the question didn't make sense. "But you always do." "That's not an answer, Emma. What if I couldn't? What if losing Rosewood Manor broke me? Would you have cared?" The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of 28 years of unasked questions. Emma faltered. "You're stronger than me. You've always been stronger." "No," Angeline said quietly. "I've just been required to be." Emma's face crumpled. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be the person you need me to be." "I don't need you to be anyone, Emma. I need you to take responsibility for what you did." "I am. I'm here. I'm apologizing. You're here because you want something. You want me to give you the venue back, or help you find another one, or fix this mess you created. That's not taking responsibility. That's asking me to enable you one more time." Emma's expression shifted, the mask falling away entirely. What remained was something Angeline had never seen before. Not manipulation or desperation, but genuine confusion. "Then what do you want from me?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to stop expecting other people to clean up your messes. And I want you to get help." "Help?" "Therapy, Emma. Real therapy. Not shopping for doctors who will write you convenient notes, but actual work on why you think lying and stealing are acceptable solutions to your problems." Emma recoiled as if she'd been slapped. "I'm not crazy." "I didn't say you were." I said you need help learning how to function without manipulating everyone around you. I don't. You forged medical documents to steal my wedding venue. Yesterday you tried to poach my vendors by lying about family arrangements. Right now you're here trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for you instead of facing what you did. Angeline's voice remained steady, clinical. That's not normal behavior, Emma. For the first time in their lives, Emma had no response. She stood in the middle of Angeline's office, stripped of her usual arsenal of tears and drama, facing a version of her sister she didn't recognize. I can't get married without a venue, Emma said finally, her voice small. Then don't get married. Not this year anyway. Take time to figure out who you are when you're not in crisis mode. But everyone will know I failed again. Everyone already knows you cheated on Daniel. Getting help won't make that worse. Emma flinched. You really hate me, don't you? The question hung in the air, and Angeline realized she'd never really considered it before. Did she hate Emma? Or did she hate what Emma represented? The golden child who could do no wrong, the victim who was always forgiven, the sister whose needs always came first. I don't hate you, Angeline said finally, but I don't trust you, and I won't sacrifice myself for you anymore. Emma nodded slowly, as if processing information in a foreign language. She looked around the office, at the vision boards, the sample invitations, the carefully organized life Angeline had built, as if seeing it for the first time. I never realized, Emma said quietly, how much you gave up for me. I gave up everything for you, every time. And I never even noticed. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was acknowledgement, which was more than Angeline had ever gotten before. Emma walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope your wedding is beautiful. I hope it's everything you dreamed of. After she left, Sophia let out a low whistle. Well, that was unexpected. Which part? The part where she didn't threaten to burn the building down. Angeline sank into her chair, emotionally exhausted. Do you think she meant it? About the therapy? Does it matter? You can't control what Emma does anymore. You can only control what you do. And what am I doing? Sophia smiled. You're getting married at Rosewood Manor in 3 weeks. And you're going to have the wedding of your dreams, surrounded by people who actually love and support you. What if no one comes? What if taking a stand means losing everyone? Then we'll have a very intimate ceremony. But Angel? I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to be surprised by how many people have been waiting for you to stand up for yourself. Sophia was right about the surprises, though they started arriving in ways Angeline never expected. The first came Tuesday morning in the form of Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, Charleston's most formidable society matron, and Rosewood Manor's former owner. At 83, she still commanded attention when she swept into Magnolia Moments, her silver cane tapping an authoritative rhythm on the hardwood floors. Miss Smith, she announced without preamble, I understand there's been some unpleasantness regarding your wedding venue. Angeline set down her coffee carefully. Eleanor Whitfield didn't make social calls, and she certainly didn't involve herself in other people's family drama, unless there was a compelling reason. Mrs. Whitfield, I'm not sure what you've heard. I've heard that your sister attempted to defraud my former property using fabricated medical documents and your dear grandmother's reputation. Eleanor's voice could have cut glass. Grace Chen was the finest woman I ever had the privilege to employ. The idea that someone would exploit her memory for personal gain is unconscionable. I'm sorry you were bothered with this. Bothered? Eleanor's eyebrows rose. My dear girl, I'm not bothered. I'm furious. And more importantly, I'm here to help. She opened her vintage Hermes bag and withdrew an envelope. Inside you'll find contact information for every premium vendor in Charleston who values my recommendation. Florists, photographers, musicians, all the people who may have been influenced by your sister's recent calls. Angeline stared at the envelope. I don't understand. Your sister has been quite busy since yesterday, attempting to secure vendors for a wedding that no longer exists. She's been using your family name and, unfortunately, some rather creative interpretations of the truth. This should remedy any confusion." The kindness was unexpected and overwhelming. "Mrs. Whitfield, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll invite me to the ceremony." "I haven't attended a wedding at Rosewood Manor since my own granddaughter's, and I'd consider it an honor to see Grace's granddaughter marry there." After Eleanor left, the surprises kept coming. James Morrison called with news that 3 other Charleston venues had contacted him about Emma's attempts to secure last-minute bookings, using fraudulent claims about family emergencies. "She's burning bridges faster than she can build them," he reported. "Word's getting around about the forged documents. The wedding industry here is smaller than people think." By Wednesday, Angeline's phone was ringing with vendors she'd never contacted, photographers, musicians, and cake designers, all calling to clarify that they were still committed to her wedding, not Emma's fictional replacement event. Apparently, Emma's desperation had led her to contact everyone on Angeline's vendor list, claiming there had been a family arrangement to transfer the contracts. "Your sister called yesterday," said Maria Santos from Low Country Blooms. "Wanted to know if she could use your flower arrangements for her own wedding. When I explained that the deposits were in your name and the contracts were specific to your event, she got unpleasant." "Unpleasant how?" "She suggested I didn't understand how important Charleston families work, that there would be consequences for not accommodating her." Maria's tone was carefully neutral. "I've been in business here for 15 years, Miss Smith. I know exactly how important families work. The important ones don't threaten small businesses." That afternoon brought the most surprising call of all, from Patricia. "Angeline." Her mother's voice was strained, formal. "I need to speak with you." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you come to the house?" Angeline almost refused automatically. The family home had always been Emma's territory, the place where her sister's versions of events became official history. But something in Patricia's tone, defeat maybe, or exhaustion, made her reconsider. "I'll be there in an hour." The Smith family home looked exactly the same as always. Perfectly manicured gardens, fresh paint, the kind of understated elegance that whispered old money, even though Richard had earned every penny through his law practice. But when Patricia opened the door, she looked diminished somehow, smaller than Angeline remembered. "Come in," Patricia said quietly. "Your father's in his study. Emma is out." They sat in the formal living room, the same space where family meetings had always been held, where Angeline had been lectured about being more understanding, more patient, more accommodating to her sister's needs. "I owe you an apology," Patricia began, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Several apologies, actually." Angeline waited. "I spoke with Caroline yesterday. She showed me the documentation Emma submitted. The medical records." Patricia's voice caught. "I didn't know she had lied to a doctor. I didn't know about the forged dates." "Would it have mattered if you did?" The question seemed to surprise Patricia. "Of course it would have mattered." "Would it?" "Because when I told you Emma had stolen my venue, you told me to be the bigger person. When I said she'd manipulated Grandma Grace's memory, you said there must have been a miscommunication. You didn't ask for Emma's side of the story because you already knew what you wanted it to be." Patricia flinched as if she'd been slapped. "That's not. I wouldn't." "Mom, when was the last Emma to sacrifice something for me? When was the last time you told her to be the bigger person?" The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of 30 years of unasked questions. "I thought I was protecting her," Patricia whispered finally. "She always seemed so fragile, so lost. And you were so capable, so strong. You thought I didn't need protecting too." "Yes." The word came out as barely a breath. "God help me, yes." Patricia looked up, and Angeline saw her mother clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the family authority figure, but as a woman who had made the same choice over and over until it became the only choice she knew how to make. "I don't know how to fix this," Patricia continued. "I don't know how to undo 30 years of what I've done to both of you." "You can't undo it," Angeline said gently. But you can stop doing it. How? By letting Emma face the consequences of her choices. By not calling me when she has her next crisis. Asking me to fix it. By seeing me as someone who deserves protection too, not just someone strong enough to handle everything. Patricia nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I've lost her, haven't I? Emma, I mean. She won't speak to me since I refused to make you give back the venue. I don't know, Mom. But if you have lost her, it's because you finally chose truth over peace. That's not something to regret. When Angeline left her parents' house that evening, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The possibility that her family might actually become a family, rather than just a collection of people managing Emma's chaos. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Emma. I called Dr. Richards today. First appointment is Monday. Thought you should know. Angeline stared at the message for a long time before typing back, I'm proud of you. It wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't an invitation back into the old patterns, but it was acknowledgement that change might actually be possible. 3 weeks later, Angeline stood in the bridal suite at Rosewood Manor, watching Sophia fuss with the cathedral-length veil that had belonged to her grandmother Grace. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting everything in a golden glow that made the antique lace look like spun sunlight. Stop fidgeting, Sophia commanded, adjusting the delicate pearl combs that held the veil in place. You're going to wrinkle something. I'm not fidgeting. Angeline smoothed her hands over the silk of her dress, a 1940s-inspired gown she'd found in a vintage boutique on King Street. It had taken 3 fittings to get it perfect, but the result was everything she'd dreamed of. Elegant, timeless, with just a hint of the old Hollywood glamour her grandmother had loved. You're absolutely fidgeting. You've checked your lipstick 4 times in the last 10 minutes. Angeline caught her reflection in the mirror and had to admit Sophia was right. But it wasn't nerves about the ceremony that had her restless. It was the uncertainty about who would actually be there to witness it. The guest list had become a casualty of the family war. Some of Patricia's friends had sent regrets, citing, quote, scheduling conflicts that everyone understood were really loyalty conflicts. A few of Emma's social circle had done the same, but the RSVPs that had come back were surprising in their own way. College friends Angeline hadn't spoken to in years, vendors who'd become genuine friends over the course of building her business, and members of Charleston's old guard, who apparently respected someone who stood their ground. Any word from your parents? Sophia asked, reading her mind. Dad will be here. He's walking me down the aisle. Angeline had asked him 2 weeks ago, half expecting him to decline to avoid choosing sides. Instead, he'd looked relieved. Mom, she shrugged. I honestly don't know. Patricia had been radio silent since their conversation at the family home. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation or manipulation. It was either the most respectful thing she'd ever done, or she was planning something dramatic for the ceremony itself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in, Sophia called. The door opened to reveal Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, resplendent in navy silk and pearls, carrying a small wrapped box. I hope I'm not intruding, Eleanor said, though her tone suggested she was quite certain she wasn't. I wanted to give you something before the ceremony. She handed Angeline the box with ceremony. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a brooch, an intricate design of magnolia blossoms crafted in silver and pearls that looked like it belonged in a museum. This was your grandmother's, Eleanor explained. She admired it during one of the parties she helped arrange, and I gave it to her as a Christmas gift her last year at Rosewood Manor. I've been saving it, hoping to find the right moment to return it to the family. Angeline's throat tightened. She could picture Grace wearing this, probably only on special occasions, probably treasuring it not just for its beauty, but for what it represented. Recognition, respect, being seen as more than just the help. I can't accept this. Of course you can. Grace would want you to have it. And frankly, after the shameful way her memory was exploited, I consider it a matter of justice. Sophia helped pin the brooch to Angeline's dress, just below her left shoulder. In the mirror, it looked like it had always belonged there. Thank you, Angeline whispered. Eleanor patted her cheek gently. Your grandmother would be so proud, dear, not just of who you've become, but of who you chose to be when it mattered most. After Eleanor left, Sophia checked her watch. Showtime in 20 minutes. I should go check on the flowers and make sure your photographer isn't having a meltdown about the lighting. Angeline was left alone in the suite, surrounded by the ghosts of every dream she'd ever had about this day. The room felt sacred somehow, charged with the weight of history and hope. Another knock, softer this time. Come in. The door opened to reveal Emma, and for a moment, Angeline wondered if she was hallucinating. Her sister looked different, thinner, tired, but somehow more present than she'd been in years. She wore a simple black dress and minimal makeup, as if she'd deliberately chosen to fade into the background. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now, Emma said quietly, hovering in the doorway like she might flee at any moment. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. I'd been sitting in my car for an hour, trying to decide. Emma stepped into the room but stayed near the door. You look beautiful. Really beautiful. Thank you. They stared at each other across the room, 28 years of history stretching between them like a chasm neither knew how to cross. I wanted to say something, Emma continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Before you get married, before everything changes, I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry I've said before, where I was really just sorry I got caught. I'm sorry for who I've been to you. For what I took from you. For making you smaller so I could feel bigger. The apology hung in the air, raw and unpolished, but somehow more genuine than any of Emma's previous performances. I started therapy, Emma added. Like you said I should. It's hard, really hard. Dr. Richards makes me look at things I don't want to see, but I'm trying to understand why I became the person who could steal her sister's wedding and feel justified about it. Angeline felt tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. Emma, I can't fix what I did. I know that. And I can't promise I'll never mess up again, because apparently I'm really good at messing up. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. How much you sacrificed. How much you gave up. How much I took without ever saying thank you. Emma reached into her purse and pulled out something small and silver, the pearl earrings their grandmother had left to both of them, the ones Emma had claimed years ago during the estate division. These should be yours today, Emma said, setting them on the dressing table. Grandma Grace would want you to have them for your wedding. Emma, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I should have given them to you years ago. Emma moved toward the door, then paused. I hope you'll be happy, Angeline. I hope you'll have everything you deserve. And maybe someday, when I've figured out how to be a better person, we can try to be sisters again. Real sisters. She was gone before Angeline could respond, leaving behind only the earrings and the lingering scent of her perfume. Angeline picked up the pearls with shaking hands. They were warm, as if Emma had been holding them tightly during her entire speech. As she put them on, she caught her reflection in the mirror and saw, not just a bride, but a woman who had fought for herself and won something precious. Not just a wedding venue, but the right to be valued, protected, and loved without conditions. Outside, she could hear the string quartet beginning the prelude. In 15 minutes, she would walk down the aisle at Rosewood Manor, in her grandmother's veil and Emma's earrings, surrounded by people who had chosen to celebrate her rather than manage her. For the first time in her life, Angeline felt like the princess her grandmother had promised she could be. The ceremony at Rosewood Manor unfolded like something from a dream, the kind Angeline had been having since she was 8 years old, standing in these same gardens with her grandmother's hand in hers. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, past the ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss, and the rows of white chairs filled with faces that glowed with genuine happiness for her. Not obligation, not social courtesy, but real joy. Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Maria from Low Country Blooms beamed from the third row, surrounded by the cascading white magnolias and garden roses she'd arranged as if they were painting a masterpiece. Richard squeezed her arm as they reached the altar. Your grandmother would be so proud, he whispered before placing her hand in David's. David. She'd almost forgotten about her groom and all the family drama, but seeing him now, steady, kind David, who'd proposed to her in this same garden 6 months ago, reminded her why she'd said yes in the first place. Not because he was convenient or expected, but because he saw her clearly and loved what he saw. "You're stunning," he murmured as her father stepped back. "And you look free." It was exactly the right word, free. The ceremony was simple, elegant, everything Angeline had planned during those 3 meticulous years. But what made it perfect weren't the details she'd obsessed over. It was the feeling in the air, the sense that everyone present was truly celebrating rather than simply attending. Patricia arrived just as the processional began, slipping into the back row with the quiet dignity of someone who understood she was there by grace, not right. She'd sent a note that morning. "I would be honored to witness your happiness, if you'll allow it. No expectations, no drama. Just a mother who finally understands what she almost lost." As Angeline and David exchanged vows under the magnolia arbor, she caught sight of her mother's face. Tearful but proud, perhaps seeing her eldest daughter clearly for the first time. The reception flowed seamlessly from ceremony to cocktails to dinner, held in Rosewood Manor's grand ballroom where her grandmother had once polished every piece of silver. Angeline moved through the evening like she was floating, accepting congratulations and compliments with a lightness she'd never felt before. "This is exactly what a wedding should feel like," Sophia said during a quiet moment between toasts. "Like a celebration instead of a performance." "It doesn't feel real yet," Angeline admitted, watching David laugh with James Morrison and several college friends who'd driven down from Charlotte. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Nothing's going wrong. Emma's not here to create drama. Your mother's behaving herself. And your vendors actually seem to be enjoying themselves. This is what happens when you surround yourself with people who actually care about you." The biggest surprise came during the father-daughter dance. As Richard spun her slowly across the ballroom floor to "The Way You Look Tonight," Grace's favorite song, he spoke quietly in her ear. "I have something to tell you," he said. "About Emma." Angeline tensed. "Dad, please don't." "She's moving to Atlanta." That stopped her cold. "What?" "She put the carriage house on the market yesterday. Dr. Richards helped her find a therapist there, someone who specializes in the kind of work Emma needs to do. She thinks being away from Charleston, away from all the patterns and expectations, might help her figure out who she really is." Angeline processed this as they continued dancing. "How do you feel about that?" "Scared," Richard admitted. "And proud. It takes courage to start over completely. I think it might be the first genuinely brave thing Emma's ever done." "And Mom? Your mother is adjusting. She's started seeing someone too. A counselor who helps parents learn how to love their children without enabling them." Richard's smile was rueful. "Apparently we all have some growing up to do." Later, as the evening wound down and guests began filtering out into the Charleston night, Angeline found herself alone on the Manor's wraparound porch. The lights from the ballroom cast everything in a warm glow, and she could hear the string quartet playing soft jazz for the lingering dancers inside. David found her there, loosening his tie with the satisfied exhaustion of someone who'd just thrown the party of a lifetime. "Hiding from your own reception?" he asked, settling onto the porch swing beside her. "Not hiding, just absorbing. It's been a perfect day." Even with all the family drama leading up to it, Angeline considered this. The family drama hadn't been a distraction from her perfect day. It had been the reason she could finally have one. Standing up to Emma, setting boundaries with her mother, ending things with Marcus when he showed his true colors. All of it had cleared the way for this moment, especially because of the family drama, she said finally. "If none of that had happened, I'd probably be married to Marcus, trying to keep everyone happy, planning my life around other people's needs. Instead, I'm married to you, surrounded by people who chose to be here, in the place that means everything to me." David pulled her closer, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their wedding reception winding down behind them. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now we go on our honeymoon to Tuscany. Then we come back and run Magnolia Moments together, and I stop working 16-hour days because I don't have to prove myself to anyone anymore. Angeline smiled. And maybe, eventually, we'll have a little girl who'll grow up knowing she's worth protecting, not just strong enough to handle everything. And Emma? Emma learns to be Emma without me there to clean up her messes. And maybe someday, when she's figured out who that person is, we'll learn to be sisters instead of victim and caretaker. A year ago, that thought would have terrified Angeline. The idea of Emma struggling without her safety net, of their family potentially falling apart completely. Tonight it felt like hope. Hope that everyone could finally become who they were meant to be, instead of who they'd been assigned to be. Inside, the last song was ending. Soon, she and David would cut the cake, toss the bouquet, and drive away to begin their real life together. But for now, she was content to sit on the porch of Rosewood Manor, wearing her grandmother's pearls and her sister's gift of grace, feeling like the princess who had finally learned to save herself. The perfect storm had passed, leaving behind clear skies and a horizon full of possibility. Angeline stood in the newly renovated Magnolia Moments studio, watching David install the last of the floating shelves that would display their expanded portfolio. The business had grown beyond her wildest expectations since the wedding, apparently standing up to family drama and creating a flawless event despite the chaos had earned her a reputation as someone who could handle anything with grace. The Hartwell wedding photos came in, Sophia announced, bursting through the door with her usual dramatic flair. And they're gorgeous. Mrs. Hartwell is already asking if we can plan her daughter's engagement party. That's the third referral this week, David observed, stepping down from the ladder. Maybe it's time to consider hiring another coordinator. The idea would have terrified Angeline 6 months ago, trusting someone else with her carefully built reputation, delegating control. Now it felt like natural growth. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Atlanta number. Saw the Southern Living feature about Magnolia Moments. So proud of you. Emma had been in Atlanta for 4 months now, working as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic while attending therapy twice a week. Her updates came sporadically, sometimes a text, occasionally a brief phone call, but they felt genuine in a way her old dramatic check-ins never had. Last month, she'd sent a photo of herself with a rescue dog she was fostering, looking tired but genuinely happy. Good news from Atlanta? David asked, reading her expression. She saw the magazine article. Angeline showed him the text. It's strange, you know. I spent so many years managing her crises that I don't know how to process her just being okay. Maybe that's the point. She gets to be okay, and you get to not know about every detail of it. The magazine feature had been Sophia's idea, a spread about Charleston's rising wedding planners that had turned into a focus piece on Magnolia Moments. The photographer had shot them at Rosewood Manor, and the headline read, Building Dreams on Foundation of Family Legacy. It was everything Angeline had ever wanted professionally, made sweeter by the fact that she'd achieved it on her own terms. Patricia knocked on the studio door, carrying a familiar-looking cake box from Sullivan's Island Bakery. Over the past months, her mother had been working to rebuild their relationship with the same methodical approach she'd once used to manage Emma's chaos, but healthier, with boundaries and realistic expectations. I brought congratulations cake, Patricia announced. James Morrison called to tell me about the Charleston City Paper Award nomination. Mom, you didn't have to. I wanted to. I'm proud of you, Angeline. Really proud. And I wanted to celebrate without waiting for a crisis to bring us together. It was a small gesture, but it represented everything that had changed. Patricia was learning to show up for joy, not just emergencies. They ate cake and talked about business plans, weekend trips, the ordinary pleasures of a relationship not built on crisis management. When Patricia left, she hugged Angeline tightly. I'm learning, she whispered, how to be proud of you without needing you to save everyone. It's harder than I thought it would be, but I'm learning. That evening, Angeline and David walked through the gardens at Rosewood Manor, something they'd started doing weekly since the wedding. Caroline had given them standing permission, understanding that the place meant something special to both of them. I got a call today, David said as they paused by the magnolia arbor where they had exchanged vows. From my college roommate in Portland. He's starting a restaurant and wants me to consult on the business plan. That sounds amazing. When would you need to go? That's the thing. He wants me to move there. Permanently. Be his partner. Angeline's first instinct was the old familiar panic. Change, disruption, the possibility of losing something good. But underneath it, she felt something new. Curiosity. What do you want to do? I want to know what you think. What we think. Together. 6 months ago, Angeline would have automatically said no, would have clung to the safety of what they'd built in Charleston. But she was learning that security didn't come from avoiding change. It came from trusting yourself to handle whatever came next. Tell me about Portland, she said, surprising herself. As David talked about food culture and coffee shops and the mountains visible from the city, Angeline felt something stir in her chest. Not fear, but possibility. Magnolia Moments was successful enough now to expand, maybe even to open a second location. Charleston would always be home, but maybe home could be bigger than one place. We don't have to decide tonight, David said, reading her thoughtful expression. No, Angeline agreed, taking his hand as they walked back toward the manor's glowing windows. But we get to decide, together, without anyone else's crisis determining our choices. It was a simple statement, but it contained everything she'd learned about love, family, and the courage to build a life based on what you wanted, rather than what others needed from you. In the distance, her phone buzzed with another text, probably Sophia with wedding emergency, or a vendor question, or any of the dozen small details that kept Magnolia Moments running. But for once, Angeline didn't reach for it immediately. The messages could wait. The crisis could wait. The world could wait. She was learning to trust that everything important would still be there when she was ready for it. The rain drummed against the windows of Magnolia Moments Portland, the sound different from Charleston storms, steadier, gentler, without the dramatic thunder that announced summer downpours in the Lowcountry. Angeline looked up from the vendor contracts spread across her desk, watching the Oregon mountains appear and disappear behind shifting clouds. The Henderson wedding just called, her new assistant Maya announced from the doorway. They want to add 20 more guests. Again. 4th time this month? Angeline asked, not looking up from the florist proposals. 5th. Should I tell them about the venue capacity limits, or do you want to handle it? A year ago, Angeline would have handled it herself, would have spent an hour on the phone managing every detail personally. Now she simply said, "You've got this. Use the script we developed for scope creep, and remember, their poor planning isn't our emergency." Maya grinned. I love saying that part. After Maya left, Angeline returned to the contracts, but her mind wandered to the phone call she'd had with Sophia that morning. Magnolia Moments Charleston was thriving under Sophia's leadership, booked solid through the following spring. The Portland location was growing more slowly but steadily, building the same reputation for elegant events executed flawlessly. Different markets, same standards, had been their motto when they'd made the decision to expand. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Restaurant inspection went perfectly. Celebrated with the staff tonight. Home around midnight. Love you. David's restaurant, Roots and Rain, had opened 3 months ago to reviews that used words like transcendent and authentic Pacific Northwest cuisine with Southern soul. The success hadn't gone to his head. If anything, it had made him more grounded, more certain that leaving Charleston had been the right choice for both of them. The next text was from Emma, 6 months clean, got promoted to vet tech, sending pictures of the engagement ring? Yes, engagement ring. Angeline opened the photos with curiosity rather than the old familiar dread. Emma looked radiant in the selfie, standing next to a bearded man in scrubs who was clearly head over heels in love with her. The ring was simple, elegant, nothing like the elaborate statement pieces Emma used to covet. She called her sister without hesitation. "Angel!" Emma's voice carried a lightness Angeline had never heard before. "Did you see the pictures? Can you believe it? Tell me about him. His name is Marcus. Wait, that's weird, right? Same name as your ex? Anyway, Dr. Marcus Chen. He's the head veterinarian at the clinic. He's kind and patient, and he calls me on my shit in the nicest possible way." Angeline smiled at the casual profanity, so different from Emma's old, carefully curated speech. How long have you been dating? 4 months. I know it's fast, but Angel, he knows everything. About the lies, about what I did to you, about the therapy, about the addiction I didn't even know I had until Dr. Richards made me see it. And he loves me anyway. Not despite my mess, but including it. Emma, that's wonderful. I want you to meet him. I know it's complicated with the distance and everything, but maybe you could come visit. Or we could come there. I'd really like your opinion before we start planning anything serious. The request was so normal, so genuinely sisterly that Angeline felt tears prick her eyes. This was what family could be. People who asked for your opinion because they valued it, not because they needed you to fix something. Of course, David and I would love to meet him. They talked for another hour about wedding plans and veterinary school and the small apartment Emma shared with 2 roommates. Ordinary things, happy things. The kind of conversation Angeline had never imagined having with her sister. After they hung up, Angeline sat in her office listening to the Portland rain and thinking about how strange it was that standing up for herself had ultimately given her back the family she'd always wanted. Her computer chimed with an email from Patricia. Saw the write-up about David's restaurant in Food and Wine. Your father and I are so proud of you both. Planning to visit next month if that works with your schedule. The casual mention of planning around Angeline's schedule rather than demanding accommodation was another small miracle. Patricia had learned to ask instead of assume, to request instead of require. The last message of the day came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield. Dearest Angeline, I hope this finds you well in your Pacific Northwest adventure. I'm writing to inform you that Rosewood Manor is being donated to the Charleston Historical Society, and they've asked me to recommend someone to plan the dedication gala. Naturally, I thought of you. Would Magnolia Moments Charleston be interested in the project? I can think of no one better suited to honor the venue where your grandmother worked, and you found your strength. Please give my regards to your charming husband. Angeline read the email twice, then called Sophia immediately. Please tell me you're going to say yes, Sophia said after Angeline explained the opportunity. This could be the most prestigious event we've ever planned. It feels right, Angeline agreed, like coming full circle. When would it be? They're suggesting next spring. Eleanor wants it to be perfect, obviously. Perfect for Eleanor Whitfield, Sophia mused. No pressure there. None at all, Angeline laughed. Want to start brainstorming impossible standards? As they talked through initial concepts, something elegant enough for Charleston society, but meaningful enough to honor the venue's working-class history, Angeline felt the familiar thrill of a challenging project, but underneath it was something new. The confidence that came from knowing she could create something beautiful without sacrificing her sanity or her relationships. Through her office window, the mountains were visible again, snow-capped peaks rising above the tree line like promises. In a few hours, David would come home smelling like rosemary and laughter, and they'd cook dinner together while planning their next adventure. Tomorrow, she'd start working on a gala that would honor her grandmother's memory at the place where everything had changed. In a few months, she'd meet Emma's fiancé and help plan a wedding that would be built on honesty instead of desperation. The perfect storm that had once threatened to destroy everything had instead cleared the way for a life bigger and more beautiful than anything Angeline had dared to dream. She was no longer the princess waiting to be saved or the caretaker saving everyone else. She was simply Angeline, loved, respected, and finally, completely free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.